In Hollywood, there are secrets that never truly disappear. They only get covered in dust, waiting for the day when someone brave enough steps forward to name them. Stefanie Powers was once part of that legend. The Elegant Woman by Robert Wagner sighed in Hart to Hart. The one who understood him both on screen and in real life, but always kept her distance from questions about the Catalina night. Then at the age of 83, she suddenly did something that left the public stunned. In an exclusive interview with Variety, Stefanie not only mentioned details that were said to have vanished from Natalie Wood's autopsy file, but also referred to the large estate that Robert Wagner inherited after his wife's death. Why would someone who had chosen to remain silent for so long decide to speak out at this moment? And in response to statements that could shake his own image, how did Robert Wagner react? On Thanksgiving night in 1981, off the coast of Catalina Island, California, a thick fog blanketed the sea surface. The atmosphere was eerily quiet. Amid the freezing water, the yacht's splendor, the vessel that Robert Wagner, the heart-to-heart star, often used for luxurious getaways, still had only dim lights on. But just a few hours later, the place once associated with the image of a sophisticated Hollywood gentleman became the scene of one of the most haunting mysteries in film history. In the early morning of November 29, 1981, Natalie Wood's body, the star of West Side Story and Rebel Without a Cause, was found floating about a kilometer from Avalon Harbor. She was wearing a red nightgown with her life jacket on backwards, socks still on her feet, and her wet hair tangled with seaweed. The autopsy report noted bruises on her wrists, knees, and arms, but they were hastily explained as post-mortem injuries. In an internal note, Dr. Thomas Nguchi had written a controversial line. So, these injuries are not consistent with a natural fall. However, that detail did not appear in the official report. According to Robert Wagner, the night before he, Natalie, and Christopher Walken, her co-star in Brainstorm, had dinner at Doug's Harbor Reef, an upscale restaurant by the Catalina waterfront. Wagner called it a pleasant evening, but the wait staff remembered a tense atmosphere. One person told the Los Angeles Times that he had slammed a glass on the table while Natalie kept her head down in silence. A nearby guest also said they heard Walken tell her, "You were born to act. Don't stop." Wagner replied in a cold voice. She should be home with her husband and children. Around 10 p.m., the three returned to the yacht's splendor. Captain Dennis Davern said the mood on board at that time was no longer normal. In a 48-hour segment on CBS, he recounted hearing the sound of breaking glass and arguing, followed by sudden silence. Wagner reported his wife missing at 1:30 a.m., but some witnesses at the harbor said they heard screams nearly 2 hours earlier. This discrepancy made investigators suspect he had delayed calling for help. A few hours later, Natalie's body was found. Police concluded she had been drunk, fallen overboard, and died in an accident. But in the file, many unusual points were almost ignored. The life jacket showed no tears, even though she was said to have struggled in the water. There was no test for fingernail residue, despite scratches on her wrists. The dinghy she was supposedly using to leave the yacht remained securely tied, intact with no signs of use. Even more notably, part of the crime scene photos went missing and only reappeared in the file in 2011. For many years afterward, the media continued to ask questions. People magazine once asked why the life jacket was on backwards and why someone is afraid of water, as Natalie would go out on deck alone on a cold night. Dominic Dunn of Vanity Fair also wrote that he had seen many people in pain, but had never seen anyone suffer in such a controlled way as Robert Wagner. The case seemed closed until 2011, when Captain Davern changed his statement. He admitted that Wagner had become truly furious and prevented anyone from turning on the lights to search for Natalie. The case was reopened. By 2018, Robert Wagner was named a person of interest. The new file listed the cause of death as undetermined. Just when everything seemed about to sink back into silence, Stefanie Powers, Robert Wagner's close co-star in Hart, suddenly broke her silence. The two had met on set in 1979 and quickly became the most compatible couple on American television. Stefanie called Wagner her soulmate friend, someone who understood her psychology and acting rhythm better than anyone. After Natalie's death, Wagner also turned to her for emotional support, and they maintained a close relationship for many years. However, in a recent interview with Variety, Stefanie revealed, "I read the autopsy file in 2012, and there were sections that had been hidden, pages that had been removed from the public copy." She implied that the original contained additional notes about round bruises around the wrists and deep scratches on the ribs, details that had disappeared from the 1981 public report. Stefanie added, someone didn't want the world to know that Natalie had struggled. They just wanted people to believe she fell. That statement sent shock waves through Hollywood. Many journalists, including Maureen Orth of Vanity Fair, noted that Stefanie's words matched the internal file copies they had accessed. She also recounted that after the tragic night, Wagner was no longer the man I once knew. During the filming of the final season of Hart, he became quiet, distracted, sometimes stopping mid-scene and staring into the distance. Stefanie recalled, he lived like a man carrying a shadow. I don't think he ever slept peacefully a single night after that. Stefanie did not directly accuse anyone, but her words reopened a door that Hollywood had tried to keep tightly closed. If even the person who had been close to Robert Wagner for many years believed that there were details deliberately concealed, then the biggest question remained. How did Natalie Wood really die? From that incident, Hollywood began to re-examine the real life behind Robert Wagner's glamorous image. The romances, rumors, and half-truths gradually emerged more clearly, like a shadow that had never truly disappeared from Natalie Wood's story. In the mid-1950s, as Hollywood entered its golden age, America took notice of a young face that the press called the nobleman of the film set. That person was Robert Wagner, then just over 20 years old. 20th Century Fox positioned him as a star, comparing him to the successor to Clark Gable. Sophisticated masculine, with a smile that could make female audiences swoon. But from that very spotlight, Wagner's name gradually became entangled in a series of romantic scandals that would still be mentioned decades later. Beverly Hills at the time lived in an atmosphere of endless parties. Wagner often appeared at the Beverly Hills Hotel where Los Angeles Examiner reporters would wait in the lobby to photograph him. He was seen with Joan Collins, then Debbie Reynolds, even Elizabeth Taylor, each time with a different beautiful woman. However, the story that caused the biggest stir in Hollywood was with Barbara Stanwyck, the veteran star of Double Indemnity, who was 23 years older than him. They met on the set of Titanic, 1953. At the time, Barbara was already a legend, while Wagner was still a young actor trying to make his mark. Yet, Barbara's allure seemed to make him unable to look away. The press at the time repeatedly hinted at romantic feelings between them. The Los Angeles Examiner even published a photo of the two leaving the set at midnight with a romantic caption. The veteran star finds a second spring with a man 2 decades younger. Many years later, in an interview, journalist Rex Reed revealed that Barbara had once confided, "He makes me feel young again. When I'm with him, I forget how old I am." Those words were essentially an admission of all the rumors. Despite this, the relationship faced strong backlash because Hollywood at the time was very strict about age gap romances. Despite the pressure, they remained quietly attached for many years. Barbara's shadow continued to loom over Wagner's life when he met Natalie Wood, the radiant 18-year-old girl of the new generation, whom America called the princess of the screen. At that time, Natalie had already entered the A-list thanks to Rebel without a cause, while Wagner was still struggling to regain his position. They met at a Christmas party at director Nicholas Ray's house. Just a few months later, Wagner proposed. In 1957, their wedding was held at the Beverly Hills Hotel and broadcast live on ABC, a rarity at the time. Life magazine put them on the cover with the headline, "Natalie Wood and Robert Wagner, America's Golden Couple." But behind the smiles for the cameras, the marriage soon cracked. Natalie was at her peak, continuously offered roles, while Wagner struggled to find parts. A close friend of Natalie later told People magazine, she said Robert loved her, but he couldn't stand it when she became more successful. On set, Natalie grew closer to her co-stars, while Wagner was rumored to have a quick temper. The Hollywood Reporter once wrote that he often showed up unexpectedly on set whenever his wife collaborated with another male director or co-star. By 1961, the press exploded with news that Wagner was involved with Anita Ekberg, the Swedish model famous after Lolth's Vita. Confidential magazine published photos of the two appearing together in Palm Springs with the caption, "The Nordic Rose and the Married Man." A year later, Natalie filed for divorce. In the filing, she only wrote 2 words, "irreconcilable differences." There were no public accusations or scandals, but almost everyone understood the real issue was more than just differences. After splitting with Natalie, Wagner married actress Marion Marshall in 1963 and had a daughter, Katie. That marriage lasted 6 years before it also fell apart. In 1972, at a party at Frank Sinatra's house in Malibu, Wagner reunited with Natalie Wood. They danced to The Way You Look Tonight, as if the old wounds had been left behind. Their remarriage stunned the media, but this seemingly fairy tale reunion still contained many signs of instability. Natalie once told her close friend Mark Crowley that she and Robert were trying to mend things through marriage counseling. Later, notes from the files of Dr. Eugene Landy, who treated them directly in Beverly Hills, were leaked and showed that Natalie had expressed concerns about her husband's unpredictable anger. These matters were hardly known to the public until Stefanie Powers, Robert's co-star in Hart, unexpectedly brought them up again in a recent interview. She recounted that while working with Wagner, he always carried a very unpredictable energy, sometimes attentive, sometimes turning into someone else in just a few seconds. Stefanie said bluntly, "He is a man with great charm, but also has a darkness that I think only those who have loved him can understand." Those revelations caused the public to view Robert Wagner's romantic history through a different lens. The man once hailed as the epitome of classic Hollywood love now appeared as a two-faced symbol. Charming and attractive, yet full of contradictions. Vanity Fair once wrote a sentence that sounded like a warning. Robert Wagner walks among beautiful women as if passing through mirrors, and in each mirror he sees a part of himself reflected, radiant, but also distorted. From those noisy romances from Stanwyck to Natalie Wood, Wagner's image became increasingly difficult to grasp. A man who made women fall for him, but also made them uneasy. And when the tragedy off Catalina occurred in 1981, all the secrets that had sunk into those old relationships suddenly resurfaced. Since then, Hollywood began asking the question, was Natalie Wood's death merely an accident or the ending of a love that had accumulated too many things never spoken? That very question paved the way for the next chapter. A civil lawsuit that dragged on for many years afterward, where the truth was once again exposed in the headlines. Over the past 4 decades in Hollywood's memory, Natalie Wood's death remains like a wound that has never closed. On the night of November 28, 1981, the waters of Catalina not only took away a star, but also left American cinema with a mystery that lasted for decades. Police at the time called it an accident due to intoxication and falling overboard. But that conclusion never convinced the majority. One of the strongest opponents was Lana Wood, Natalie's sister, who never accepted that explanation. To Lana, Natalie was not just a blood sister. The two sisters had acted together, shared the most private things, and Lana also understood the hidden corners of the marriage between Natalie and Robert Wagner. Every time she appeared on Deline NBC, Inside Edition, or Good Morning America, she returned with the same obsession. Why is everyone staying silent when the truth is still at the bottom of the sea? In 2011, Lana Wood and Captain Dennis Davern, who was on the Splendor that fateful night, issued a new statement. According to Davern, he heard the sound of something falling, a woman's scream, and then a chilling silence. He also said Robert Wagner had become furious, threw things, and prevented anyone from turning on the lights to search. The new testimony created a shock like an explosion in Hollywood. The Los Angeles Times ran the headline, "Lana Wood reopens the Catalina obsession." The Hollywood Reporter called it the biggest crack in the image of America's perfect husband. Not long after, Lana approached a legal team led by Michael Aguirre and filed a civil lawsuit in Los Angeles court demanding the file be reopened and a re-examination of her sister's body. Public opinion was swept into a new wave. Within just a few days, many newspapers from Vanity Fair to Daily News simultaneously republished images of the Splendor yacht with the question, was this really the site of an accident or the scene of a hidden truth? In November 2011, the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Office announced the reopening of the investigation. The new report revealed many previously undisclosed details. On Natalie's body, there were round bruises more consistent with fingerprints than fall injuries. Most notably, the life jacket she was wearing was on backwards, a situation almost impossible if the wearer had been conscious. In 2013, CBS aired a special episode, Death in Darkwater, on 48 Hours Mystery. The episode released additional forensic images showing abrasions around Natalie's wrists that looked like signs someone had tried to hold her back. That information once again stirred up the American public. In a conversation with The Guardian, Lana Wood said in a trembling voice, "I'm not asking for revenge. I just want to know what really happened to my sister. I want that man to answer." The whole of America shuddered at those words because no one needed to ask who she was referring to. In 2018, Los Angeles police caused a stir by naming Robert Wagner a person of interest, meaning someone who could be directly linked to the case. No charges were filed, but that phrase alone was enough to cause Wagner's image and career to plummet once again.